course, this is a great pleasure for me now to welcome Keith Kelly, who's going to be our keynote speaker. I guess many of you are familiar with Keith Kelly, have seen him, experienced him, have read books, articles that he produced. Well, Keith Kelly and I, we've been long-term friends and companions. We've been traveling the CLIL road for many years together. And well, I always tend to say that Austrian CLIL wouldn't have been that successful if we hadn't had Keith Kelly at our side. Keith Kelly is somebody who's been with us from the very beginning, and he's done so many seminars and teacher training sessions here in Austria. And he's someone you can really rely on, and you ask him a question and you'll get the proper answer within minutes. This is really great. And well, Keith and I, we've just finished writing a chapter, an article for an international publication, which will be launched most probably in early 2021. And we wrote about CLIL, continuous professional development here in Austria, because we'd like to share with the people abroad the success story of CLIL here in Austria, and tell them how we've been doing it and what actually we do, and what makes Austrian CLIL special in some way. And well, actually Keith Kelly and me, we got pretty much in common, to be honest, even let's say in private life. I've just recently learned that Keith Kelly has a dog too. His dog is called Rufus. And well, all those who know me well know that I'm a true lover of dogs. So my dog's called Cooper. And well, so it's not always CLIL we talk about. So sometimes it's our dogs we talk about. And I feel that both Rufus and Cooper, they're great guys, both of them. But well, of course, I know you're not here to learn about dogs. You're here to learn about CLIL. And this is why I'm going to ask Keith for his keynote, please.
So wonderful introduction from Andreas. And in short, we're friends and colleagues. And he took my introduction a little bit away from me. I'm going to talk about curriculum skills, but I wanted to say one or two words about myself and Andreas, you know, and this is what I was going to show everybody first, because I wanted to wish everybody to be safe and healthy. And also your sanity, you know. For me, Rufus has helped me keep my sanity over the last 6 months since he came into our family. And I know Andreas will understand that. Well, I'm here to talk about curriculum skills, and it sounds quite a dull topic, but I hope to impart some of my motivation for this area of CLIL, because I see in curriculum skills something a little bit undervalued, definitely underused, and with an opportunity for lots of collaboration between the content curriculum and the language curriculum. But not only between content subject teachers and other content subject teachers too. And I first came across this area of CLIL working in science. And here we have a bunch of science curriculum skills. And for me today, I'm always thinking about what language does this mean? When I see these curriculum skills, I'm thinking, you know, what are the students expected to say and write when they're experiencing and practicing these curriculum skills? And what I'd like to suggest is there's a whole area of possibility for the language curriculum within these subject curriculum skills. So I'm going to actually try and shake things up a little bit and offer perhaps what might be a fairly new direction for colleagues, not just in Austria, but in other parts of our CLIL world as well, for getting teachers sharing what they do and what's in their curriculum with the view to linking up intelligently what students are expected to do in different parts of the curriculum. And I'll explain more about that as I go through. From this particular list, we can hone in on 3 particular descriptors. And there you might see a little bit more clearly what sort of language we might be talking about. You know, with comparing and contrasting, for example, we can see adjective phrases in this descriptor. And ever since I started this journey, I've been compiling language to fit into curriculum content skills. And I'm going to share that with everybody towards the end of my plenary. And I do stress, please make a note of my email if you're interested in any of this, because I'm very happy to share not only the slides, but anything I refer to with colleagues who are of interest. It's really where I get to do new projects I'm interested in, because people see this and they get in touch. I'll decline that, it might be a mistake. We can predict this language. It's easy for the language colleagues, when they see comparison, to sit down, get their language curriculum document out and look at what language is probably going to occur in a content classroom that's working with comparing and contrasting things. So you have the beginnings of a language curriculum, which comes from the content curriculum. That was really a valuable revelation for me to think about. Well, we could teach language based on what we know about what's going on in maths and what's going on in physics and what's going on in geography. And that's what made me sit down to write this plenary. Another thing happened to me. I was invited to the Republic of Georgia to do some training with combined language and content teachers from the same school. So pairs of teachers, maybe threesome of teachers coming together to implement what the government in Georgia has introduced, an integrated curriculum. And what that means is at each age level of the educational system in Georgia, the teachers are being asked to produce their curriculum with respect paid to what's happening in other areas of the curriculum. I've never seen anything like it anywhere else. There are some projects in Austria, I know, like the co-op CLIL trainings, which work on this in some ways, but I think we could do a heck of a lot more. And what you can see here is a table that we worked up together with the language teachers and the subject teachers, looking at what the curriculum tells us that's happening in the content classrooms and what the language teachers could help practice and develop. And I have to say here, one of the really valuable things about this is we're not asking the language teachers to teach content. We're asking the language teachers to practice curriculum skills, which is very different. And I'm also going to show some examples of how I think that's possible. One little bit of housekeeping, perhaps, for Isabella and Andreas. I'm not paying any attention to chat, so maybe you could keep an eye on any questions that arise and we can deal with them at the end. I will leave 6 or 7 minutes for questions.
We'll do so, okay? Don't worry, taking care of the time.
And you can see, I've suggested in the last column, once we've dealt with the overarching curriculum skills from the content curriculum, looked at what those sub-skills might be that make up those overarching skills, and then make some suggestions that can happen in the language classroom. And that's the last column. So I'm going to share some examples from this as well. For example, the colleagues in Georgia brainstormed these areas. They all felt in terms of language and content, they could be covered and meet the demands of the biology curriculum plus the language curriculum, the geography curriculum plus the English curriculum. But not only, we had science teachers working with art teachers, and they looked at women in art over the ages, describing change, characteristics, similarity, and difference. So we can also tie up the curriculum across subjects, not exclusively language in a subject, but other subjects too. And hopefully, go some way for our students feeling that what they're doing is meaningfully connected to what's going on in other areas of the curriculum. in terms of an easy, approachable theme for language teachers, food and drink appears all over the age range of the language curriculum, not just English, in any language, you know. And some of the overarching curriculum skills are these: making observations about behavior, handling data to do with food behavior and drink behavior. And what data handling means, if you're not that familiar with it as a curriculum concept, it actually means carrying out surveys, considering statistics on patterns and populations that are already available, local groups, regional groups, national groups, and then internationally. And this appears throughout a lot of our general educational curriculum. And of course, making presentations on the work that our students do. Not just a language skill, it's also a skill which happens across the curriculum. One thing that is available for general science and also language teachers is a program called Science Across the World, which sadly is no longer live. But this is a survey which is part of that program, getting learners observing their own food and drink habits. In the space of 24 hours, they write down what they're doing and everything they eat and drink within a waking to sleeping day. And you can imagine, if you've got 30 learners in your classroom, that creates a lot of data to handle, to analyze, to visualize, and to present. It helps what's happening in data handling in other subjects if language teachers are doing this kind of thing. Here's a poster presentation from one of my own classes where they've represented the results from their class in a big poster with sentences describing the numbers from breakfast to bedtime. 12 people have breakfast at home. Bulgarian kids eat lots of pastry dishes, like burek, you might be familiar with that, banitsa. They eat lots of carbohydrates. And actually our partner class we did this exchange with was in Austria. And the Austrian teenagers had much less pastry for breakfast. And they actually did have more fruit and more muesli and more nuts, as the stereotype suggested when we looked at it. And what we can do with a comparison like that is actually have a look at comparative behaviors and have a look at comparative data sets of populations from two countries, very small populations, but nevertheless, we can actually have a look at what the health institutions are suggesting about these diets and go some way. You know, it's not deep science. Most language teachers are interested in this kind of thing, I think, anyway, but it helps what's going on in other areas of the content curriculum if language teachers are getting their learners dealing with this kind of content. You can have a look at the phrases in red. We've got some functions highlighted here that tell us about a lot more language as well, you know, giving advice here, hypothesizing. We thought our diet was relatively healthy, but now we see that, you know, it's great practice for what goes on in the science curriculum, really, stating what's going to happen, testing it, and then going back and making comments about it. Did it work? Was it what you thought? Analyzing and drawing conclusions on food habits and their similarities and differences, suggesting ways to improve. All of this is part of the extra content curriculum outside the language curriculum. We can predict language, and it's what language teachers do best. We can provide for our students in a way that content teachers may not feel they can or have time to, you know. And a little story here, if I may, about my own students. I work with groups of teenagers who are going to boarding school in the UK. And something I notice about them is communicatively, they're great. Their language is very communicative. But when I ask them to look at things academically, they struggle with academic English. They can say goes and comes when describing a process, but what they really need to describe a process successfully and to be able to describe processes around the curriculum is not just comes and goes, but passes through transfers, transports. And that's something I think the language curriculum could do a lot more with and of in supporting what goes on in the content curriculum. And we can provide tables like these with this, this kind of formulaic language for analyzing data, which is the example I'm looking at now. My ice cream chart, some of you may have seen it before, colleagues, but I like to try and do some interaction, even though we're in Zoom and I can't see anybody except Isabella and Andreas. Who eats the most ice cream in Europe? I'll pause just for a second to let you think about it. Lots of people say Italy. Well, have a look at the answers. We can find data that tells us about ice cream consumption, and then our learners can compare their routines with national and international data. They can see how similar or different their behaviors are with data that's available. Now, this is from Science Across the World, but you can look at Eurostat. Your national statistics agency will have data about food consumption, if not specifically ice cream, but the ice cream companies will have data about different countries. And that's a very good research project for students as well, looking at specific food items. Chocolate is another great one. A lot of people say that the hot countries, when it turns out to be the colder countries, eat more ice cream, more sugar, I'm told by biologists. We're interested in the comparisons and the interpretations of the data, and it's very good practice. This is the language that students would need to use to interpret and draw conclusions about that data. It's very useful for dealing with data around the rest of the curriculum. So I bring us back to the brainstorm in the Georgian meeting I worked on with language and content teachers. What I've shown you at this stage is a little snapshot of, kind of my attempts to use food with my language learners to practice some of the curriculum skills I know, because of this research, are very useful in other areas of the curriculum. And my note to myself at the bottom of the screen there is to say, the language lessons can feed into the content lessons through coordinating the curriculum skills. That'll make sense to the people who come on the co-op CLIL trainings. But I wonder how many of the language colleagues in our audience are having conversations like this with some of the content teachers they work with in their schools. Even if you feel you don't have time because of your English language textbook, even a little bit, let's have one curriculum focus class that has engaged you in a discussion with your subject colleagues and made you think about the skills that those students are using in maths or science or engineering. And then let's do something in English that supports the skills through English that they're doing in those other areas. It's great CLIL, if you ask me. And I did some research in some other overarching curriculum skills, kind of ruthlessly stolen from colleagues' assignments from the wonderful trainings we've done in Austria. I always ask them, do you mind if I use your assignment work? And usually they say yes. And these are some of the resources I'm going to show you now. Describing objects. I found this 3D modeling material, which has students talking about, very technically, size and shape, and also light, a 3-point lighting setup. And of course, we describe objects all over the curriculum. And what the language curriculum could do is get students doing listen and draw activities where they're going to be talking about diagonals and horizontals and verticals and segments and equally divided segments, dissection in the middle, and so on and so on. We can talk to our curriculum colleagues, have a look at some of the language that, is not specific to a subject, but is useful for doing activities like this in the language classroom. And if we do that, we know we're going to be helping our students succeed in describing technical objects in other parts of the curriculum. Process description is a huge area of the content curriculum. Huge, absolutely huge. Not just the sciences, which you might think of as a natural home for processes, the geography curriculum as well, economics as well, describing how systems work. And the language is not specific. The technical vocabulary is, but the language tends to be repeated. So what I'm suggesting is we can do a bit of research, find out where this language gets repeated. And I found this wonderful heat pump, which we're having installed in a new build at our house right now. So I was interested to have a look at how this works. And it takes heat from the ambient air and uses it for warming inside, or takes heat from inside and releases it into the ambient air. And we can have a look at the more general description of this process, of this kind of process. You know, you've got steps, you've got stages, you've got before and after, you've got inputs and outputs, you've got things happening as a result, you've got cause-effect language, and all of that is something we can find areas in the language curriculum to practice. This is from the colleague's assignment, and you might notice from the gaps in this assignment that the focus is on the noun phrases. And I think what I'm suggesting is, well, the language teachers, they don't need to cope with the nouns. The subject teachers can cope with that. It's that area of speciality that they are trained for. But what the language teachers can do is deal with the verbs, process descriptions, and sequencing phrases within process descriptions are full of verb phrases that we can practice with non-deep technical science material, you know, everyday science material. And I found something with my, I call it an academic English course I do with my Bulgarian teens going to boarding school in the UK. Bulgaria has lots of hydropower plants. So we're looking at the topic of energy with them and the environment. And we came across information about hydropower plants in the Rhodopes. And one of the boys said, well, let's have a look at how it works. And you would be amazed how much of the description of this appears here. So what I'm saying is something that we can practice in the language lesson. Maybe we do different things with the language than the content teacher would, maybe. But it's very good repetition, meaningful repetition for what's going on in other areas of the curriculum. Keep looking at my clock to make sure I'm not going to run over. Describing characteristics, of course, you know, describing the characteristics of different phenomena is going to be something that happens across the curriculum. And I like to show these wonderful lessons that I'm privy to with colleagues in Austria, and this is to do with soil texturing. What a wonderful theme to do with students in English. Get them to get their hands on soil and describe it. I wish I'd done this kind of thing in my French class or my German class when I was at school. And what you can see here is preparation for students performing a soil texturing activity. Now, I've got this video and I would like to ask Isabella, shout or wave a hand if you can't hear this, because I may need to do something, okay? It's only a minute, but look at this performance, colleagues. It's wonderful. No sound.
Soil texturing video.
Okay.
First you give some sand to your hand, and then you put some water together. Then you mix it. You can form a ball. If you can't form a ball, you know that it's only sand. Right. There you can see a really form ball. And now Jacob is forming some ribbons. biases in the mix as well. And now, this here is very gritty. So we have here sandy clay loam, and it's very gritty, and it feels very like a sugar and yeah.
Okay. Okay, let me get you back to me. So amazing. We've got a group of Austrian teenagers who are describing the characteristics of different types of soil. And you've got these compound adjectival phrases. You've got feels like, you can hear what it sounds like. We can do this in the language curriculum. A lot of topics lend themselves to this kind of formulaic description of characteristics. Let's find out what they are and talk to some of our content colleagues and do it around the same time so that the curriculum skill language can pass over. I hope you're with me. I'm going a little bit quicker because I want to make sure we've got some time for 6 minutes of some comments from you all. Grouping and categories, of course. And I found this lesson which looks at grouping and categorizing countries according to their development. You know, it's another area of the curriculum, economics or geography, if you like. And the way this happens in the geography lesson is colleagues are expected to get their students, where's my spotlight, showing the students the characteristics of different countries around the world according to these different factors. And they've got a reading activity to do. The teacher cuts out the cards, puts the students in groups, and the students read the cards and decide together where the characteristics go. And what we're doing when we do this activity, on the right side of my screen, the students are going to be using all of these verb phrases by talking about the countries and where they belong. The regions and the countries divided into developed or whatever. And that's a very useful thing for language teachers to practice too, by grouping and classifying other things. Comparing and contrasting, of course, cells and tissues in the human organism, plant and animal cells. It's very common in the biology curriculum at a number of ages actually to compare plants and animals in different ways. And we compare them in terms of structure, function, and location. Have a look at this, colleagues. It's not biology. There's no biology on this page. It's cross-curricular, academic, verb phrases, phrases for describing types, adverbial phrases, and we can practice this language outside the biology classroom, but match it up so that the language overlaps, I think. Public transport describes structure, function, location. You know, it's a natural thing. Economy, we describe structure, function, location of different economies. So it's not just the English curriculum that benefits, it's the other subject areas, as well as our focus, which is science, biology. Composition. Now, a slightly different structure, isn't it? But you can see here in a company organization, you might have the hierarchy of jobs, who is answerable to who's responsible for what their roles are, how jobs are delegated, a composition of a firm. It happens in science as well. The human organism and the composition from cells to organ is described. And the verb phrases you can see here are similar. And what I'm saying is, I think this is something that we can get together, language teachers. And then we talk to the content colleagues, and then let's make time in the calendar and do some meaningful preparation so that the students go on into their economics or their biology or their maths, and they reuse this language. Composition in art, you know. So we've got the human organism, we've got art, and what was the other one? We've got company composition. And giving instructions, this is my last one, and I realize I've gone through this like a steamroller. And I spent more time on this. So my invitation again goes out to you all here, colleagues. If you're interested in this, whether you're a language teacher or a subject teacher, get in touch, because I like doing this kind of thing. And I'll say yes if you ask me to help you. And this comes from another assignment. This is developing black and white photography. Because of course, art, design and photography, it's quite a widespread subject in Austrian HTLs and other colleges. And it's all instruction language. Have a look at this instruction language. Imperatives, you'd expect imperatives. Infinitives of purpose. You know, infinitives of purpose. Why am I smiling? Because this academic language is hidden in our curriculum documents and in our textbooks. And it's time we made it visible and help our learners accumulate it. Because I've got this sneaky feeling, like my teenagers, our youngsters are growing and we think they're very good at English because they can communicate, but they're not necessarily communicating academically. They need more than our conversational communicative English in order to communicate academically. Sequencing phrases, time phrases. The second part, I've chopped it up just to show you. Conditional forms, look, may lead to, and giving advice. I'm going to ask you in a moment to try and think of a context in the language curriculum where we can teach all of this so we can help the design and photography colleagues. Giving advice, be careful to or not to. Adverbial phrases, gently, consistently, regularly. Yeah, it makes sense because you're handling something sensitive. Time phrases and sequencing phrases, of course, there's going to be cause, effect, time phrases and sequencing phrases. More conditional phrases, yeah? If clauses and when clauses with a comma. We're teaching grammar in photography. It's wonderful. Depending on, may require. I'm just going to storm ahead. You'll all get access, I think, to this recording, and I'm happy to send anybody my slides as well if you want them. Yeah. There's the when. And also we've got another imperative of purpose. Store something for later use, not do this to an infinitive of purpose. I wasn't aware of this. It's very useful in instructions. Of course it is. And I think this is the last one. Take care not to. So we've got a negative advice as well. And conditional structures that are not just the modals. We've got otherwise, yeah? Which is also very useful for explaining how to do something carefully. Now, my summary, you can read it, I won't read it out to you, of the areas of language in that particular 3 pages I took from the assignment is full of wonderful language. But the challenge for the language colleagues is, where can we do all of this language in one place to help the design and photography colleagues? What do you think? I'll be quiet for a second to let you think about it. I don't know if anybody's written anything. Anybody written anything about where we could do this in English, all of this wonderful language? No? Well, I do this all the time with my juniors, but I haven't done it with my secondary. And you know what I do with my juniors that practices a lot of this language? We cook. We cook in the classroom. We prepare ingredients. We measure ingredients. We use adverb phrases for pouring gently, carefully. We use modals for describing what might happen, yeah, what may happen. We use if clauses. And a lot of that is possible through a lesson based on preparing some kind of, I mean, usually we do biscuits and muffins because it's quite easy to do. You do them in a microwave. You don't need a real oven. But the process is the same, really. The language is recycled. And I don't think we've cottoned onto it yet, colleagues. I think we're stuck on the noun phrases that appear in the content textbooks. And language teachers tend to try to find thematic content areas that are interesting for them and their students. This offers another place for collaboration. Finding this academic language and communicating that discovery to the content colleague or the language colleague and timetabling a bit of collaboration, not necessarily in the same lesson, but in subsequent lessons or consecutive lessons, when it can be rolled over into the following lesson. Now, hang on a second. I've come back to this slide. Actually, I didn't show it earlier, but this is my kind of invitation to anybody interested, because for the last 10 years, I've been collecting language for these academic functions. You may know of Avril Coxhead, the academic word list at tertiary level. And so she did a master's thesis on academic language for all manner of subjects, business, medicine, accounting, university, and then created an online platform for practicing that language. It's wonderful. And we don't really have anything like that for secondary or primary. So I've been compiling one. If you write to me and you want to do a bit of a collaborative project with me involved, I'll send it to you and you can have it and you can use it and add to it and use it in work with your own colleagues. Now, I think we've got about 8 or 9 minutes left. Is that right? So, are there any comments or questions that you'd like to throw at me, and I'll answer them as soon as I can before we leave? I do get to see the comments now, can't I?
Everyone, you just have to unmute your microphone and you just start speaking. First come, first serve, actually. With the virtual expo, the one who's loudest can be seen most easily.
I didn't realize that. They're all shy.
Hello, Keith. This is Beate speaking from the Haupt in Vienna.
Hey, Beate, lovely to hear you.
It's great to be able to listen, and I have brought my students as well. And I was wondering, you were just mentioning the platform where we can practice these functions.
Yes.
Can you tell me where I can find it?
If you Google academic word list, you'll find Avril Coxhead's wonderful website, academic word list. But
Thanks a lot.
I can send it to you as well, Beate.
Thank you, Keith.
Are there any other questions? I mean, are we ready? Are we ready for this sort of, it really turns the language curriculum upside down, doesn't it? Helen shared the academic word list in the chat box. Thank you, Helen. I'll keep talking until somebody interrupts me then, because with I mentioned my teenagers who are going to boarding school in the UK. I created a mini curriculum because I didn't want to do regular language lessons. So I've made about, it's like 30 weeks all through the virus. It's been very productive, where I focus on academic functions of language and I find themes that they can deal with that's not deep science. And we look at the environment. There's lots on the environment. They're interested in pollution. They're interested in protecting Bulgarian nature. And I'll share that too. There's a wonderful website, TIG World, with amazing short academic videos, 2-3 minutes. And I was part of a program writing supplementary material for this website. And I didn't think I'd ever use all of it though, but I like 6 months of academic English. Well, maybe I could ask, is there a person in the group who'd like to get involved in developing academic English through the language curriculum? Have I put everybody off? I've upset everybody. No, I don't want to do that.
No, I just think it sounds like a great idea. But I think that the problem is getting all of the other subjects on board to share all of the information that they are going to be teaching and everything, so that it could all be coordinated.
Yeah, coordination is a crucial question. Thanks, Joanna. And of course, the Austrian Ministry of Education has very detailed curriculum documents, which are accessible to anybody. You know, you don't have to be a science teacher to read what's going on in the science curriculum. You have to be able to speak German, of course, but the documents are there. The Descriptoren, I think they're called, the descriptors, are clear. So you can see where cause-effect happens in a certain subject. But it does need to be found. And that does take some work, I think. One question, can I ask the audience? I don't know if there's any way to actually survey it quickly, is I wonder how many language teachers there are here. I noticed we've got a lot of visitors from Italy, and I wondered how many of them are language teachers. It's difficult for me to see. I can see somebody putting their hand up, but that would be interesting to see, you know. And co-op CLIL trainings that we've been doing in Austria has involved each time a group of about 30 mixed language and subject teachers. And we've been doing it for probably 3 or 4 years now, I think, Andreas. So, you know, we've worked with probably over 100 or so pairs of teachers in language and content. But what they tend not to develop these curriculum language functions. And I think we could be onto a winner. I think we could write books about it, colleagues. Let's make some money and sell books writing about curriculum language functions.
Okay, hello, my name is Elena. I'm a university teacher in Córdoba, Spain, in the south of Spain. And I'm here. Thank you for your presentation, which was lovely today. And I was teaching, in fact, CLIL to my students today. They are here today attending to your presentation. And okay. I stopped my class to listen to you. It was great. Thank you so much, because what you have said is definitely more things that I say to them, but it's something more that I used to say to them. They are 4-year teacher education students. Most of them are language teachers, will be language teacher next year, and some of them will be content teachers. So I'm teaching them CLIL for their future profession. Yeah. So I just want to say we are like a bunch of 40 something future language teachers here. And I'm one language teacher. I'm teaching English and bilingual education and intercultural education in the University of Córdoba. I just want to say, we are here, a bunch of us. Thank you so much, because your presentation was really, really useful for us, and we enjoyed that a lot. So just to say that, we are here. Thank you so much.
Listen, I think for the language teachers and the undergraduate pre-service teachers looking for content to work with, there's a lot of really nice accessible content that they can work with if you're not familiar with it. In my website, which is factworld.info, we produced a booklet which is CLIL for ELTs. And there is some work on these curriculum skills, language functions there, but it's mainly accessible content themes for language teachers. I think, colleagues, we need to keep an eye on Georgia. When I worked with the Ministry of Education there, I used Austria as an example of joined up thinking in teacher education. Andreas and I have written about it in our chapter in this book, top down and bottom up connected rather than one or the other. And if they introduce their integrated curriculum, they should produce some very interesting things that we could all learn from. Successes and problems too, I think. Listen, I think I'm being shown the clock. So let me say formally thank you for listening. It's quite a new area for me to present about. I'd certainly be interested in sharing with colleagues. So get in touch if I can help with what you're doing. I'd be delighted.